David here with Figboot on pens. I said that this year I'd work to get some more ink reviews in, and while I've done a few already, I do have at least 4 or 5 that I committed to reviewing in the somewhat near future. So look for a lot more ink reviews coming very soon. The ink I have for you today is from Krishna, and it is Krishna Jungle Volcano. Krishna is based out of India and is a relative newcomer to the ink market, at least here in the United States. The company is the brainchild of Dr. Neethu Srikumar. Dr. Srikumar is an anesthesiologist at a government hospital in Kerala, the Kerala region of India, which is on the western coast of India's southern tip, kind of on the shores of the Arabian Sea. When the doctor was younger, he would grind and turn pens and studied under other experienced craftsmen. He still turns pens from time to time, and mainly he lacquers ebonite pens. And he has a very long waiting list for his work. But in 2010, the doctor began making fountain pen ink. And while he has team members to help out with the packaging and business side of things, the process of creating Krishna inks is all done by the doctor himself. Krishna was kind enough to send me 4 of their inks. I'll show you all 4, but the main focus will be on my favorite of the group, which is called Jungle Volcano. And to get a closer look at Jungle Volcano and the rest of the inks, let's go over here to camera 2. As I said, Krishna provided me with 4 of their inks. This is the first one here. This one is called Tulsi. The name refers to a variety of basil plant. The bottles Krishna inks come in are rather small. They're only 20 milliliters. I've been told that larger bottles are possibly being considered down the line, but currently this is the only size bottle available. The neck of the bottle is plenty wide for any of your pens, but with a bottle this shallow, once the bottle is half empty, you might have issues filling the pen, especially pens which fill from the end of the section as opposed to somewhat on the feed. This is what Tulsi looks like. It's a nice ivy green. Then next we have an ink called Pencil. And this is what Pencil looks like. Kind of more of a graphite, kind of gray, dark gray color. Then there is Ochre, and this is what Ochre looks like, kind of a greenish yellow. And then finally, we have Jungle Volcano. And this color really stands out from the others for a couple of different reasons, mainly because the sheen. The ink has a real reddish-brown base with a distinctive green sheen to it. Let's see if you can kind of see that green sheen on here. That it's really nice. That here is what all 4 colors look like on Tomoe River paper. There's the Jungle Volcano and the Pencil. You can kind of really see the green sheen on there. And then this is the Ochre and the Tulsi. Now, on this Tomoe River paper, I really applied the ink rather generously, really overdoing it a bit. So these samples are more saturated than you'll experience when using these inks. What you'll actually see are closer to these swabs here. So here's an example of the Ochre and the Tulsi next to their swabs. And then here is what the Pencil and Jungle Volcano look like with their swabs. So let's take a closer look at this Krishna Jungle Volcano. So we have Krishna Jungle Volcano. This is Rhodia 80-gram paper. I really found that I had very little or no bleed through. You can see over here, I applied some of the ink over here, and you can see the green sheen. And then while it's still wet, I kind of pulled it over so you can see the underlying base color. But you can see here, there is no bleed through or even ghosting at all. It was pretty well behaved on this 80-gram paper. And I'd say that the shade and sheen are very high. With a number of passes, with a Pilot Parallel 2.4, you can see that it gets progressively darker with each of the passes. Now, for this review, I actually am using 3 different pens. The first one is a brand new acquisition for me. It is from a pen from a Chinese brand called Live Into You, and this is called the Shiyu. The colorful swirling acrylic used in this pen is just mesmerizing. And this pen has a fine nib. Next up, I am using this Faber-Castell Loom, which has a rather generous medium nib. And then finally, with a very generous broad nib, is this Visconti Pininfarina. Now, when I do an ink review, I like to tie in films or music or something that relates to the ink that I'm reviewing. Since this ink originates from India, I thought I should discuss a Bollywood film. Now, Hindi cinema is often referred to as Bollywood, just like American cinema is referred generically as Hollywood. Indian cinema is the world's largest in regard to film production, with about 2,000 films being produced on an annual basis. And while I'm a self-admitted film nerd and enjoy watching foreign films, Bollywood films were a bit of a gap in my film knowledge. Now, I've enjoyed more Western-friendly films about India and its culture, like Mississippi Masala and Slumdog Millionaire, but those really can't be considered true Bollywood films. So I asked for a recommendation from a coworker who's more versed in the subject, and the film that they recommended to me was called, now I'm sure I'm going to butcher this, but it's a popular film called Hum Apikapi Hain Kun, which translates to Who Am I to You? When it came out in 1994, the movie was a huge hit in India, accounting for the inflation. It earned just under $200 million in today's dollars, making it at the time the highest earning Indian film of all time. It's a story about a couple brought together by an arranged marriage and the relationship between their two families. In regard to a writing sample, I wanted to talk about this film. First of all, this film is a romantic comedy that reminded me a lot of American films. From the 1950s and 60s. With the tone, the playful humor, the singing, the dancing, it really reminded me of a film like Singing in the Rain. And next up, with a medium nib with the Loom, something else about the film is that it's pretty much a staple of all Bollywood films, is that it has an abundance of cultural themes, singing, dancing, and traditional dress. This movie has lots of songs, lots of big dance numbers, and lots of colorful costumes, all of which are a staple of Bollywood films, and this film is no exception. It seems like a lot of the songs in this film are also very dialogue-centric, and what I mean by that is that the songs contain meaningful dialogue between the characters which progress the story, rather than the songs just being interludes. And then finally here with the Visconti Pininfarina, the movie actually tells two distinct stories. It's almost two separate films. At over 3 hours long, it is rather lengthy, but about 2.5 and 3 hour films are not uncommon for India. In this movie, the first 2 hours essentially still tell one part of the story, and then there's a drastic turn in the last hour of the film. It has a decidedly different tone. Now, there is a cohesiveness between the two, and the ending ties everything together nicely, but I won't spoil the film. This is a film that had a lasting impact on Indian culture. To this day, weddings often include songs and games featured in the film. And like I said previously, I enjoy I do enjoy foreign films. There's good and bad, just like domestic films, but some of the most memorable and moving films that I've ever seen were from outside of the U.S. market. And while watching a film with subtitles can be a turnoff for some, I highly recommend reading a film every once in a while. You might just gain some insight into another culture and a broader understanding of people who come from different parts of the world. Plus, you might just see a great movie as well. So, okay, back to this ink. In regard to flow, I do find that the flow of this is rather wet. In regard to drying time, I thought this was a little interesting. For the fine nib, the drying time was actually a little bit longer than it was for the medium nib. I think maybe just because it was having to press it into the paper just a little bit more, and some more ink was going in there, and the medium was kind of more on the surface, and that dried a little bit quicker. That I do find that this reddish brown with a green sheen is a unique combination that I really care for. For a high sheen ink, I feel that the ratio of base color, that reddish brown base, to the sheen is a good ratio. I did find that when I inked up each pen, the ink would not completely come off the section. If I used just a dry tissue, I would find that the ink would stay here, and you can tell here it even stained it just a little bit. But if I use a wet tissue, then all of this will come off. So it's just something that you needed a wet tissue in order to have it completely come off the pen. I do enjoy Krishna Jungle Volcano. I really wish it came in larger bottles. And while it retails for only $8, 20 milliliters is not that much ink. So I do wish it came in some larger bottles. So in regard to a water test, let's go ahead and just drip some water on here. And while that sits there for a second, let's look at some chromatography. I find that I was actually surprised by this chromatography. It just had a lot more pink in it than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be more of a reddish brown, but you can see that there's an abundance of pink in this ink as well. So I just found that to be interesting. In regard to some samples, this is what the Jungle Volcano looks like. And that here is what it looks like next to some Franklin Christoph Terra Firma. This is something that was somewhat similar, the Jeherban Rouge Hemerite. And then here it is with the Papier Bleu House of the Rising Sun, which was more of an orangish red. Okay, let's see how it did in regard to waterproof. I wouldn't say it's too waterproof, but as you could see with this, it seems like the pink stays around a lot longer than the other colors. That the other colors are going to dissipate more in the water, but it's kind of what is left behind is the pink. So there you have Krishna Jungle Volcano. This is an ink that I really like. I think that the green sheen on this reddish brown is really unique, and I think that it just provides an interesting, kind of a subtle look to it that I really enjoy. And that I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this ink. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.